The Aussie Report. News and information concerning corruption across Australia. G'day folks, it's Mad Aussie here and welcome to the Aussie Report. This episode we're going to be talking about election safeguards. Is our election process secure? Is it corrupt? I mean, there's a lot of talk of using the Biden computers or something to count, and so people are unsure, and a lot of people may be considering voting properly this time around for the first time, maybe because of what's going on. I think voting this year is going to be quite interesting. So I just want to give you a few little tips and explanations and show you some websites, play a video for you and stuff. You can go through and deep dive and understand the information of these websites yourself. I won't be reading everything out. I'm just going to briefly go through them for you. So the first one is Australian government website, the Australian Electoral Commission. There's a little link below, and it starts off saying, one of the most important elements of democracy is electoral integrity. Delivering a secure and trusted election increasingly requires collaboration among many groups. Federal agencies, political parties and campaigners, media, social media platforms and individual Australian voters. We all play a role. Each election, the Australian Electoral Commission implements a number of safeguards for election process with a strong focus on electoral integrity. We also work closely with the partner agencies to monitor and respond to emerging threats. And so they have a list here for 4 things. We have the C1 and election communication, electoral integrity assurance task force, counting process. And so you can click on these, open them up and check them out. This one has a little video here on voting and stuff like that, and we'll check that out in a sec. And I'll just read this for you. Australia's much admired manual system of federal elections has one of the most complex and time-consuming counting operations in the world. While it can at times require patience, the federal election counting process delivers integrity to the results of concentrating on accuracy in a highly transparent manner. So why must this process be right and not rushed? And so you can read more, and they've got more links. We've got the House of Representatives count, the Senate count, and I'm sure it tells you about them. It probably gives you the results too when it comes to time for that, So let's just quickly check out this short video here.
Australians are quite used to having a result on election night, knowing what party will form government. Now that's not something that the AEC does. The AEC never has and probably never will declare a result on election night. We're providing an indicative count for people, media commentators, electoral analysts, indeed the parties and candidates themselves, to form an opinion about which way the results might be going. Typically you'll have media commentators or candidates themselves coming out and announcing that they believe that they're going to claim victory or one side or the other is going to win. That's not a legal result by the AEC just yet. We do have to undertake fresh scrutiny, and we also have to make sure absolutely that the margin in a count is larger than the potential amount of votes the left to receive. That's our declaration test, the mathematical impossibility we have to meet before we can declare a seat. That doesn't happen on election night. In fact, it won't happen the day after either. It typically happens in the days and weeks post-election night. The AEC's declaration of a seat result is a legal declaration. We are the ones that determine the final result, whether it be a House of Representatives contest or a Senate contest. We return what is the formal instruction for a member of the House of Representatives or a senator to take their place in federal parliament.
Authorised by the Electoral Commissioner, Canberra.
Okay, so that gives you a little idea of how the voting counts work. Next up, we've got procedural integrity and accessibility. Australian is often admired internationally for high levels of participation and the variety of voting services provided. just as critical is the integrity built into those services. Find that odd, the high level of participation, considering it's compulsory to vote in Australia. But a lot of people, well, not a lot, some people haven't ever enrolled to vote, and I think they give you a couple of weeks after the election has been announced to enroll for your first time with amnesty or something like that. If you just enroll some other time, you can get fined for not enrolling previously or something. So yeah, look into that before you make any decisions there. If you enroll to vote, when you go to vote, you are not required to fill out any of the ballot forms. You can go there, get your name signed off, fold your forms up, put them in the box and leave them blank. Now, I have heard around that if you do that, your vote goes to the sitting party or the party in power. It just means that, according to you, you just don't care what's going on and you're happy the way things are. You don't want change. Not guaranteed. Maybe your vote just gets discounted and it's a no vote. I'm not sure. I'd like to find that out. And if I can shortly find that out, I'll provide that. So next up we have election security. Election security is incorporated into all aspects of our service delivery, with upholding the security of ballot papers in primary focus. Some threats to election security can be more complex and often reach beyond the realm of election management or the remit of electoral laws. They include criminal acts, terrorism, cyber attacks, foreign interference, and attempts at disinformation. It is these threats that are the focus of the Electoral Integrity Assurance Task Force that has been in place since before 2019 federal election. While no known widespread cybersecurity or criminal incident has impacted on the integrity of past federal election results, it is important to remain vigilant. So they stepped up their security for that before 2019. Voter safety. An Australian federal election is a major event in the nation's calendar where people come together at voting locations across the country. The health and safety of our staff and all voters is a priority at the AEC and the conduct of this important democracy in the process. And I'm not going to read the next section because that's the C one. So we'll go over to my next website we've got going here is another government website, Parliament of Australia, entitled How Hackable Are Australian Federal Elections? Recent revelations that a sophisticated foreign power had hacked computers in the Australian Parliament and major Australian political parties only months before an expected federal election raises questions as to how vulnerable Australian elections are to hacking. Ignoring for a moment that the potential effects of disinformation campaigns, state-sponsored and otherwise, in traditional and social media, the mechanics of collecting and counting votes suggests that our elections are not particularly vulnerable to hacking. Australia federal elections are still highly decentralised and manual exercises, despite the extensive use of computers for various election processes. Continuing on, it says, at a time when most people carry a sophisticated miniature computer in their pocket, the idea of voting by marking a piece of paper with a pencil may seem anachronistic. However, having a paper ballot makes counting, recounting and verifying the vote straightforward. And following the loss of ballot papers from the 2013 Western Australian Senate election, the AEC has devoted considerable attention to ballot paper handling, procedures and ballot paper security. This goes on with counting the ballot papers. Ballot papers in Australia, federal elections are counted by hand after the close of polling, generally in one of the approximately 7,000 polling places in which they are cast. Declaration votes such as postal votes, absent votes and early votes cast outside of the voters' electorate are also counted by hand, but as they need to be sent to the voters' electorate to be counted, the count occurs at a central location for each electorate. They are counted in the presence of scrutineers appointed by candidates who are able to keep their own tally of the results. Votes from each counting centre are reported to the Australian Electoral Commission, returning officer for the electorate. These are then reported to the AEC and entered into a computer system, which makes the results publicly available. The AEC reports votes down to the polling place level, making them easy to reconcile with local observations. So they are manual at the moment. We'll move on to the next website, which is from The Guardian, which is titled Australian Election 2022 Voters Guide, Everything You Need to Know. So if you are unsure on voting, they have a little video here, which I'll play in a sec to let you know what's going on. How do I enrol to vote, and when is the deadline? The Australian Electoral Commission, the independent body that runs elections, says there are 17 million people enrolled to vote in the 2022 federal election, which is 96.3% of the eligible voting population. It estimates there are more than 650,000 eligible Australians who have not yet enrolled to vote. Now, I'm not going to encourage anybody to enrol to vote, but if you choose to, that's how you do it. Eligible Australians have 1 week after the election has been announced to enrol. On Sunday, the AEC confirmed the deadline was 8 p.m. on Monday the 18th of April, regardless of the Easter Monday public holiday. You can enrol on this page. There's a link there of the AEC website. If you were previously enrolled but have changed any personal details such as your name or address, you can update them here. If you are not sure of the status for your enrolment, you can check here. So there's links there for all that, and you can also call a phone number right there. 132326, and that goes to the AEC, and you can probably ask them, give them your name and everything, and check to see your enrolment status. But yeah, check the link. I have used that link before, not from this direct page, but I have used the government link, which is probably this one. How to check your status for electoral vote, and you just put your name, postcode, suburb, street name, verify code that you're not a robot, and verify it, and they check your status and make sure that you are enrolled. I think it didn't work at one time, and then it did work on another computer or later on or something. It showed me there. So as with all computers and websites, they're not always accurate, but you should be right with mostly. There are government websites anyway. So again, there's a phone number if you do have trouble. Okay, so I'm going to start a video now for you from Malcolm Roberts. I know I've played a couple of his lately. I do not endorse him or his party. I don't follow any party or endorse them in any particular way. He's just currently asking some of the right questions at the moment. Somebody has to do this in election coming up, and somebody has to be that push the buttons kind of guy, and so he's just asking the questions which are going in line with some of the information I'm providing. I don't endorse him in any way whatsoever, but I don't hate either. I'm not a hater, otherwise I wouldn't be playing his videos. I appreciate anybody asking questions. I love to ask questions, such as ask questions, and that's how I find answers. Just keep asking questions. So check me out. This is going to be the end of it anyway. I'll play this video, and then I'll end the video there. I'll play this Malcolm Roberts. So do check me out on Telegram. I've got a group chat going there now as well. Just look me up on the Aussie Report, or I'll even put links at the bottom of this description. I am on Twitter and Facebook too, if you want to look me up there. And Odyssey and BitChute. Odyssey and BitChute both have videos up, just a couple that aren't on YouTube because they're a bit, not quite right for YouTube standards. And if I ever get taken down from YouTube, that's where I'm going to be. So Odyssey, I love Odyssey. I think it's got a lot of potential. It's not the best at the moment, but neither was YouTube when it first started out. So anyway, getting off track, let's hear from Malcolm Roberts talking about the election and the voting process.
We're attending again today. Can I start with a compliment to your social media team. It has a nice balance between humour and information in what is sometimes a very hostile environment. So it's reassuring and pleasing. I'd also like to compliment Minister Morton for his voting integrity bills, Minister, and his acknowledging the work that I did in forming those initiatives with my integrity of elections bill that preceded it. I think it's very important for people to understand, voters right around the country, to be assured that their vote will not be wasted and that there is no reason to not vote. There is every reason to turn up now because we'll be having audits of the election processes. So my first question today is, as a result of multiple reports from constituents who went into a booth in previous elections and were told they'd already voted, this may be human error by the poll worker, yet I think the only issue, I think, is Minister Morton's electoral integrity package failed to address that my bill did. For clarity, there are two types of multiple voting. One where a person votes multiple times under their own name, and another where a person votes multiple times under different names. The first one, multiple voting under one's own name, has been very well examined, and the conclusion seems to be that it does not make a tangible difference because we've now got electronic rolls in most booths. Not all, but most. So let's turn to the second one, people voting multiple times under different names. So has the AEC done any work on this issue?
Well, Senator, this is something, we look at the entire voting process at the end of every election. We put as you know, a submission into the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, where we raise issues that we think have been flagged during the conduct of the previous election. And many of those observations are our observations, and many of them are also passed to us by others. The issue of multiple voting has been dealt with in those submissions previously and in supplementary submissions. What you're referring to there is impersonation, and that's not something that we've had any evidence that has had any sort of impact on the election at all. It's not something that's been raised with us in any formal way previously. It's not something that has been put into a submission at the Joint Standing Committee at all. To the best of my memory. So that's not something that we're looking at all.
Okay.
And the other thing with impersonation, Senator, is that those sorts of things do become known, because if someone was doing impersonation on a large scale, we would get feedback from a range of different sources that would be the case. Don't forget that many of these polling booths are actually community polling booths where people know other people in the community as well. So it's not something that's been personally raised with me. I'm not sure the Deputy Commissioner, whether that's been raised with you.
No, that's correct. Jeff Pope, Deputy Electoral Commissioner. And I would add, Senator, that there's another category, which is what we call apparent multi-voting, which is actually an administrative error where someone has been marked as voting on a paper certified list, and they've put the wrong mark against a person's name.
Okay.
So there is So sometimes it can be seen as being something else, but it is simply an administrative error.
So is there a phone number or a way of reporting occurrences in order to further investigate the problem, if there is a problem?
On our website, Senator, there is a
fraud email reporting process,
and people are welcome to use that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the AEC stopped residency checks last century, 1995. When was the last time the AEC audited, let's say, a sample of the electoral roll to get an idea of accuracy?
We use a whole range of tools to check the accuracy of the electoral roll, and we conduct internal audits on that. I think the ANAO also conducted an audit of the electoral roll. If anyone remembers when that might have been. A lot of shaking heads, but we could find that for you fairly easily. So it's been audited even by the ANAO, Senator. In fact, now that I'm warming to my theme, I think it may have been audited twice. And I'd have to check that for you, because they came, if I'm wrong, I apologise to the ANAO, because but I think they came back to check the results of the initial audit. So I'm happy to come back to you on that.
Okay,
but
if you could, please.
So there's more than one way of auditing the accuracy of the roll. Second thing is, when we get data on someone's residence from more than one data source, which is what we do, we effectively triangulate that data to make sure that it's accurate. We also do, as I mentioned before, our own internal checks of the accuracy of our data entry as well to make sure that that is an accurate process.
We do, and we match our data with a range of other data sources, Senator, and we do an annual quality assurance process also.
So although you say you haven't had any evidence or you don't see much possibility of it, this is a case surely where voter ID would stop someone voting multiple times under different names or voting under the names of people who are no longer voting themselves. I know what you're saying about community, but sometimes people rock up to a booth that's not in their community.
Senator, I might just perhaps repeat what we said at the last estimates. I'm loath to get involved in the issue of the voter ID process. I think that's a highly political issue. It's a matter for Parliament. I do know, I'm genuinely trying to be right down the centre here. I understand the arguments on both sides of this, but it has become a very polarising debate in places where this has been implemented. So that's a matter for Parliament. What we're reflecting on here is the processes that we put in place to assure the vote within the legislation that's currently valid. That bit about voter ID is something that I think I a little flippantly said last time. We have a definite policy not to have a policy on because we don't get dragged into that process.
I can see that. I accept it. It is ironic then, Minister, that we need a voter ID. We need an ID to get into a pub, but we don't need an ID to get into a vote. That's just a comment.
No, your comments noted, Senator Roberts, and indeed the government would wish that there had been or were broader support for some of the ID measures that, as you acknowledged, Ms Morton had brought forward.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me.